Ultraviolet altitude is associated with the causal state, and this relates to Aurobindo's overmind. Those who experience it say that it's the same consciousness experienced by all of manifestation. At the base of all being is this hum of consciousness, this causal state, this causal body, this causal reality. Experience of Kensho, Samadhi, enlightenment, the experience of the true self, the original face, the one taste of the infinite absolute Godhead, which is simply consciousness and nothing else. The causal body is the fundamental backdrop upon which all states emerge. So it's not so much a state in itself, and this is where things kind of get a little more semantic in nature. In the Great Chain, you have body, mind, soul, spirit. And if that's confusing, soul and spirit being different from mind. Body, mind, soul, spirit. So what are those three things that aren't your body, right? Because body's kind of easy. So the soul would include the mind, but also that which is not conscious to the mind. It's whatever the thing is which produces the mind. Likewise, spirit is that which produces soul, which then produces minds. At the base of our awareness is not an identity or a thought or a feeling. It is this simple consciousness, this simple awareness, the simple state of being present, witnessing an entrance of the divine into the manifest. As with all of these, now that we're talking about states and state structures, the utility of talking about it is going to decrease more and more. So we can talk about the state of witnessing or the state of experiencing the abyss or the void or the unmanifest, and we're just talking words. You could describe it using the exact opposite words. It's a very anti-dualistic problems. Classically, these things are unspeakable, especially when we get up into the top two altitudes. Into the ultraviolet, into the overmind, this requires a great deal more effort. The problem here is that it's experienced, there's many forms of death that must occur. It does occur as a sequence of death, a sequence of letting go of every part of the identity, every part of the mind. And to be apart from that and to find yourself apart from that, it really does require a sort of emotional letting go of that, which is sort of a grieving process, which is sort of like dying. So practice dying now with your meditation practice. And this is the gateway into the causal, or the ultraviolet in this case, which is awareness itself of nothing, a witnessing state of vast formless emptiness. And this witness is the identity of the true self, the authentic self, and there is a deeper identity which is all of that, inclusive of the unmanifest and creation both, which is non-dual. Again, these are just words. These are just words that people have used historically to describe states of consciousness. To identify the various bodies that you're experiencing at this time, you have a sensory body that you're experiencing right now with your physical senses, possibly your emotions. You also have a mental body where if I am not even paying attention to my physical body, there's still something happening in my awareness and my consciousness. So that is a mental body, which we could call a subtle body. Same idea. It's a soul or a psyche. We call it that. It's just the mind. It's the psyche. It's the mind. Both the conscious and the unconscious right now. Things that are unconscious, things that are hidden back there, maybe in our memory, maybe just we aren't in a state right now to perceive. From that subtle body, we can get into the causal body, which is less well understood. This being that consciousness itself is a super layer to all these other layers, so that the mystic discovers that in meditation they can leave the body, they can leave awareness of the body and have no awareness of it and still be conscious and still have consciousness. They can cease the mind, they can stop thought, they can stop mental ideation, and the mind can be put away, and still you can have consciousness outside of mind. This is a claim being made. Even if that isn't truly what's happening, that's the sensation of it. That's what it feels like. What more could a person possibly say to convince you of structure stages of consciousness or even states of consciousness through meditation than to say, if you meditate and follow the instructions for an hour a day for 2 years, you'll have some of these state experiences. If you don't try that, then or conduct that experiment, have a bunch of people try it, then how could you make a claim either way? It seems like the phenomenology of a state should come first before anything else. If you want to say what drunkenness is, whether drunkenness exists, you'll have to talk to people who get drunk. You'll have to listen to them about what they're saying their experience is like to some extent. But me talking about indigo will not make you experience indigo any more than me talking about causal will make you experience that. If I talk about dreaming, you might have a little contact high, but you're not going to experience dreaming. If I talk about being high on LSD, that doesn't make you high on LSD. It might make you feel some sympathetic phenomena, but the state of being on LSD is best experienced as being on LSD if you find that to be medically safe. So it's important to realize that you are always in a state of consciousness. So we're talking about altered states of consciousness, deliberately altering the state of consciousness. You can't deny the existence of the backdrop that's already there, which is an altitude. It's a manifestation of an altitude. It may look like we're stacking stuff, we're adding information, but really we're taking information away in the third tier. We're saying, wait a minute, forget about all that growing up, all those altitudes, all that information. What is my nature? When I tell all that stuff to stop, when I stop generating an altitude, what is still there? These are what these waking up stages are more like. They're more like an interrogation to what you are prior to the manifestation of altitudes. And this is where you do find those deeper layers of mind and the deeper layers of archetypes, the subtle illumination, the causal enlightenment, and the return to form as the unmanifest. So should you be drunk and incomprehensible describing your state, as the mystic may seem, or completely sober and not in a mystical state, describing the state, or completely sober trying to describe what it's like to be drunk and necessarily being a little bit unsure yourself because you're not in that state at present. It should be mentioned too that Wilbur's model has changed a bit over time, especially, as I said, stacking the spiritual stages on top versus on the side. What is the nature of states and stages? How do those relate to growing up, waking up, growing up? How do those relate? Is spirituality a line of development? Lots of different approaches. And it remains somewhat of an enigma. If you follow Wilbur's career basically from his very first book to the present day, it is always to place those spiritual structures at some sort of top or supreme level. And I don't think that that's an ideological position. I just think that's what he's found in his research and what he's found in his own experimentation with consciousness. I think that anyone who's interested in this or curious about this, you should know if there's one main thing to look at, to pick apart, to criticize about Wilbur's model, and he's very upfront about it himself, is that the structure stages of meditative awareness, how they exactly relate to these structure stages, altitudes of growing up, developing as society and as individuals. Do they go together? That's his thesis. That's a big part of his thesis. Not the whole thing, but as far as the developmental model, that's a huge part of what Wilbur contributes and what he's recognized for, and it's probably the best point of attack because so few people are making this point.